Hello, Carly here with Advanced Aesthetic Training. Thanks for watching this short video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. Over the coming days, I'm going to be sharing a lot of information, so be sure to check your inbox every day and mark my messages as important. It's also a good idea to set some time aside each day to watch my videos and act on the information they contain. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to tell if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, the causes of imposter syndrome, ways of boosting your self confidence, how to handle failure, and much, much more. Of course, if you want to get a head start on all this, I've put together a class called the Esthetician's Guide to Overcoming Imposter Syndrome that explains everything in detail. You can find out all about it by clicking the link below. Oftentimes, those with imposter syndrome feel like they're a fraud, and they live their life fearful that they're going to be found out at any moment. They feel like they don't belong where they are, and they only got there through luck. This can affect anyone, regardless of their social status, work background, skill level, or degree of expertise. The term imposter syndrome was first used by psychologists Suzanne Imes and Pauline Rose Clance back in the 1970s. When the concept was introduced, it was originally thought to apply only to high-achieving women. Since then, however, it's been acknowledged as a much more widespread experience. As you'll discover in the coming days, it can be overcome. In the next video, I'll show you how to determine if you have imposter syndrome. And this is probably the most important video of the series, so be sure to check back tomorrow. Hello, Carly here from Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 2 of this video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. Today I want to do a quick quiz with you to help find out if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, and it will only take a few minutes. Do you suffer from any of these common traits? Do you think you're a fraud and worried you'll be discovered? When people praise or give you a compliment, do you feel that they're just being nice? Do you feel unworthy of success? Do you feel that your success was down to luck instead of talent, knowledge, or hard work? When you look around at the material possessions you've acquired in your lifetime, do you feel that you don't deserve them? Do you doubt your own abilities? Do you often feel anxious or depressed for no reason? Do you feel the need to take on more training even though you're already quite knowledgeable? Do you over-prepare for meetings and presentations? Do you distrust people and fear that everyone who tries to be friendly may have an ulterior motive? Are there some things you're afraid to try because you're afraid others will discover that you're not up to the job? Do you set massive goals and then get depressed when you fail to achieve them? Do you sometimes sabotage your own success? Do you tend to keep coworkers at arm's length in case they see through your facade and get a glimpse of the real you? If you answered yes to any of those questions, there's a good chance that you may have imposter syndrome. As you've been watching this video series, I suspect that you already may feel that way. Admitting you have a problem is the first step in finding a solution. The second step is finding out what caused the problem in the first place. We'll take a closer look at that step tomorrow, so be sure to check your inbox then. If you can't wait until tomorrow, enroll in my class called the Esthetician's Guide to Overcoming Imposter Syndrome now. It's available as an instant download. Just click the link below to get started. Hello, Carly here with Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 3 of this video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. There are many theories as to why people develop imposter syndrome. When Suzanne Imes and Pauline Clance first coined the term in their groundbreaking paper, The Imposter Phenomenon in High-Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Intervention, back in 1978, they put it down to a number of factors. Chiefly, they put it down to women being underrepresented in corporate America, and that imposter syndrome was often down to gender conditioning. As it's now accepted that imposter syndrome is just as prevalent in men, this aspect has been now largely discounted. Family dynamics is the leading cause of imposter syndrome. The expectations and the value of success drummed into you during your childhood can stay with you throughout your life. Perhaps you come from a family of high achievers and feel that you can't measure up unless you strive for perfection. Conversely, perhaps your family had a fairly low expectation of you and didn't think you'd amount to much. As a consequence, you feel you can't be the successful person you are now because that wasn't meant to be your destiny. Maybe your parents were overly critical and would find fault with everything. Now you carry on the habit yourself and question your abilities. Cultural conditioning might also be a factor. Different cultures put different emphasis on things like education and achievements, as well as what type of occupation constitutes a real job. The fact that you can make a good living doing something others consider as lightweight may weigh heavily and unnecessarily on you. Many sectors of society rate talent and natural ability below training and knowledge. You may be a natural storyteller, but because you don't have a master's degree in English Lit, you figure that any success must be a fluke. The key here is to identify the cause and look at it rationally. Ask yourself if there's any merit on what you're thinking. Chances are you won't find any. I go into much more detail in my class, The Esthetician's Guide to Imposter Syndrome. Enroll today by clicking the link below. Hey there, Carly here from Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 4 of this video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've had many successes in your life. Imposter syndrome is a byproduct of success, after all. And you know something? Those successes weren't because you were lucky, they were because you were good. Really, you might not believe me, but it's true. Some people with imposter syndrome also suffer from low self-confidence. It's not hard to see why. After all, if you think everything you've gotten so far is by luck, you're likely to doubt your real abilities. There are many ways that you can boost your self-confidence, and I want to talk about a couple of them today. Self-confidence comes from within, so the first step should be to practice positive self-talk. Everybody talks to themselves. It doesn't mean you're some kind of nut job. Your mind is always carrying on internal conversations of thought. Instead of saying, I can't do this, tell yourself, this is going to be a challenge. Let's see how it goes. When you manage to pull it off, reassure yourself by saying, yes, I got that right. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. The second thing is to surround yourself with positive people who believe in you. Accept their compliments and praise. If they don't think you're a fraud, there's no reason why you should. There's a lot more to tell you. Don't forget to enroll in my virtual class, The Esthetician's Guide to Overcoming Imposter Syndrome today for all the details. Learn more by clicking the link below. Hey there, Carly here with Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 5 of this video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. One way to prove to yourself that you're not a fraud and that your success is not down to luck alone is to set a realistic goal and plan how to achieve it. Note the word realistic. I'm not talking about some grand scheme here, just something achievable. Decide on something that you want to do, have, or get within the next couple of days. Ideally, this should be something within your resources, time, physical, and financial, and should not rely heavily on anyone else's involvement. Now, draw up a plan to reach that goal. The thought of drawing up a plan can scare people, but it's easier than you think. The key is to start at the end and work backwards. In other words, start at the point where you've successfully reached your goal and work backwards to now. This way you know that everything you want to do is achievable and you have both the ability and the resources to do it. You'll know this before you do this, you have to do that, and before you do that, you have to do something else. And you can also work on plan B at the same time. Before I can do this, I have to do that. But if that doesn't work, I can always do this instead. Suddenly, failure isn't an option, and it has nothing to do with luck. Write your plan down and put it in the form of a to-do list so you can check off what you've done as you go along. And congratulate yourself when you've done each step. Tell yourself, I was able to do that, and it's good. Build up to more complicated long-term goals using the same technique. At every stage of the process, remind yourself that you've reached this far through your own abilities. Keep the positive people you've surrounded yourself with in the loop so they can provide any reassurance necessary. Don't forget to enroll in the Esthetician's Guide to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. Just click the link below to get started. Hello, Carly here with Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 6 of this short video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. So despite what I said yesterday, sometimes things won't go as planned and you will fail. Oftentimes this happens at work when you have to rely heavily on other people who have their own agenda that doesn't exactly tie in with your goal. Sometimes the plan will fail due to factors outside of your control or because something you didn't know about, overlooked, or didn't take into consideration when drawing your plan up. Other times the plan will fail because of some unknown factor. When that happens, the only way to figure out what works is by eliminating everything that doesn't work. That type of failure is actually good, and with perseverance can be turned into success. Let me give you an example. Somewhere in your home, you probably have a can of WD-40. Do you know what WD-40 stands for? It stands for Water Displacement 40th Formula. The people behind WD-40 tried and failed 39 times before finding a formula that worked. Despite all of that effort, these days the product doesn't get used for its original purpose very often. WD-40 was intended to stop the warheads of Cold War rockets from getting rusty, but nowadays people use it as a lubricant. Go figure. The key to overcoming failure and turning it into success is to dissect the failure, work out why what you were doing failed, and either figure out a workaround if your goal is still achievable, or simply file the experience away for future reference to make sure it never happens again. Either way, you're going to learn from the experience. The workplace can be a minefield of failure, especially as so many things are outside of your control. To help you navigate this dangerous territory, and one that can make you feel like an imposter in your own life, I devote a large section of my class to this subject. So click on the link below to enroll in the Esthetician's Guide to Overcome Imposter Syndrome today. Hello, Carly here with Advanced Aesthetic Training. Welcome to part 7 of this video series on overcoming imposter syndrome. In this final installment, I'm going to give you some practical tips for overcoming imposter syndrome. First of all, redefine competence. Competent people know what they're good at and what they're not. Become one of them. Do what you'll say you'll do, but don't overpromise. Secondly, stop comparing yourself to other people. You're you, and there are lots of factors concerning other people's lives that you know nothing about. Finally, think of some of your successes, both large and small. Write down everything you did to achieve them. Go back over all the steps you took, and you'll find that luck had very little, if anything, to do with those successes. Anytime you start to feel unworthy of the success that you're having, reread those notes to remind yourself of the effort you put in to get where you are today. Build on those to make a brighter tomorrow. So we've covered quite a lot in this video series, so let's just recap. We talked about the causes of imposter syndrome and how to tell if you're suffering from it. We covered some of the ways of boosting your self-confidence and how to handle and learn from a failure, and how to draw up a plan that can be achieved without having anything to do with luck. But you know what? Within the confines of this short video series, I've only been able to scratch the surface of this fascinating and life-changing subject. There's a whole bunch of stuff I just haven't had the time to tell you about, like assertiveness, imposter syndrome triggers, and the 5 types of imposter syndrome, just to name a few. I cover them all, plus some of the things we discussed in this video series in more detail in my course, The Esthetician's Guide to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. It's still available at the introductory price of $24.97, but I'm going to be raising the price soon. So enroll right now from the link below and start living the life you were born to live.